If you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Law by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the Masquerade. In this episode, we conclude the unravelling the mysteries behind the origins, motives and cultures of the 16 ghostly guilds in the world of darkness. This episode will focus on the Solicitors Guild and their Intimation Arcanos. One dear explorer, it's been quite an emotional roller coaster, hasn't it? I know you well enough by now to know that you've been quite frankly obsessed about the histories of these Stygian wraiths, and even if you weren't, I know you have certainly been invested with them. You know, if you were one of these ghosts, there would be certain ways of changing that, or perhaps tweak them would be more an accurate term for it. Indeed, explorer, not even control over your emotions is guaranteed in the underworld. Now, how is this possible? Well, that is something I will tell you right now. It is a power that is associated with the last of the forbidden guilds, the Solicitors, and that power is the Intimation Arcanos. It is a very subtle yet very devastating power that allows one to manipulate desire. Usually, this is on one individual, but some records we have collected will suggest one can make an object more desirable than it actually is. Those well-versed in the Arcanos, be it someone belonging to the guild or not, are said to instinctually know the most recent desires of a wraith and can naturally resist the effects of another's use of intimation. With this power, one can invoke zeal, dig up long-suppressed urges, regardless of how moral they are, or strip the most determined of individuals of all their excitement, turning them into lethargy incarnate. Masters of the guild are said to be able to totally reprogram their targets, fashioning the wraith to feel one emotion. With one case we unearthed had a wraith left with only monstrous programmed obsessions. The range here is quite worrying, from small suggestive pools to complete brainwashing. It's essentially supernatural grooming, which is unnerving to think about, especially if the target is made aware of these seemingly alien origins. This isn't just limited to wraiths, mind you, as it can work on all manner of life, be it restless or restless flesh and bone. That said, we understand that intimation is most effective on ghosts. This makes sense, as the wraith's existence is one of unparalleled passions and emotions. It can also be applied to a wraith shadow, which is quite frightening to think about, especially if the shadow is in control of the target or the user of intimation. It no doubt would leave oblivion a subtle and unnoticed grip in the wraith's mind, and when things go wrong, they really do go wrong. Not only does it alert the world of their presence, but it may implant the opposite of what they try to suggest in the heads of their targets. On the topic of shadows, it has been suggested by both partner and solicitor guild wraiths that intimation did in fact arise from primitive attempts to understand and influence the shadow, and whilst both castigate and intimation are similar in the sense of taming, or should I say, affecting certain emotional urges, there is a clear distinction. Castigate uses the shadow's desires to tame that particular instance of oblivion. Intimation focuses on the desires of the shadow and the psyche too, for the user's own desires. Another comparison is their name. A solicitor is a lawyer that advises rather than argues, which we know the partners do quite a bit. The breaking of wheels, for lack of a better phrase, comes up a lot in solicitor culture. It takes the form mostly as a Catherine wheel, which they adopt as their own symbol that dates back to the 15th century, which is meant to symbolize the denoting their power to bend others to their will. Solicitors also conduct psychological warfare on targets by causing small wheels to be rolled at appropriate moments, or wear jewelry with the wheel motif for subtle identification. There are easier ways of identifying a solicitor guild wraith though, which is the fact the left eye is always a blazing, poisonous luminous green. Some sources state that its glow has the same intensity as a candle, but when one uses it, it brightens to the intensity to read to, and it glows more intensely as the wraith becomes more well versed in the Intimation Arcanos. There are some wraiths in the guild who attempt to cover this up with masks or hoods, but this often draws suspicion, as one might expect, and those in the know will know who and what they are dealing with. And now you know what to look for when identifying a Solicitors Guild, but I bet you don't know their origins. Well, to tell you the truth, there's not a lot of information we know either, but it's better than nothing, I suppose. The Solicitors Guild has never been a large organisation, as one would imagine with talents like theirs. The first recorded instances of Solicitor Guild behaviour came from a circle of Affian guild wraiths that set a price for determining the outcome of a necropolitan political deliberations, quickly cementing the guild to be, and their Intimation Arcanos, as one of intrigue and influence across the quick and restless dead, which made the Arcanos quite the sought-after resource. It is said they reached their peak in terms of power and influence during the Black Plague in the Skinlands in the 17th century, which was at the tail end of the Guild of the Wars. The plague created a massive influx of wraiths in the Shadowlands and triggered far-reaching upheavals across Europe. The Death Lords did not attempt to squash the Solicitors' right to power, for they were too busy dealing with the Skeletal Lords' much larger growth spurt in power. The Solicitors saw an opportunity to betray their sponsors, not a huge conspiracy as many false records state, but in 1,000 personal betrayals of powers and plays that encouraged and fed one another when the involved Solicitors weren't acting at cross purposes. Had this been successful, chances are it would be the Solicitors leading the revolt of the guilds a century before the Artificers did, but alas, that is not what happened. Jaron, the Devlords, and various houses most noble in Stygia began various slander campaigns that would result in the guild and Arcanos outlawed, for both were seen as far too dangerous. Those that survived the hierarchy's onslaught would turn their attention to the guilds, seeing them as a means of exacting their revenge on the other guilds, and we all know how that went. The guild would claw some power back during the Great War, during and just after the Fourth Great Maelstrom. Their guildmaster, a figure simply known as Center of the Wheel, is the only one that knew what these plans entail, meaning that the guild as a whole would serve as foot soldiers in his and the guild's internal politics. Very mysterious, I know, but just as vague, which does make sense. You bargain with a solicitor and they're sought after gifts, and there's every chance that you become a victim of theirs and don't even know it, becoming pawns in the solicitor's schemes. The individual wraith may seek them to tip intrigues in their favour, but this lesser guild, so to speak, are still unwelcome in social situations. Of course, this has done very little to affect the guild status quo, other than them raising the prices of their services and hiding in plain sight. This payment often comes in two steps: the exorbitant price in oboli, relics, artifacts, or services, which is the official fee, and the second part is performing the desired effect on the client themselves. Not only does this impress the client of the solicitor's talent, but it does, as previously stated, make the client more willing to do what the guild requests during and after that initial encounter, meaning that the guild has many tools and agents in the underworld. We are aware that the guild has elaborate initiation rituals to ensure new inductees loyal and co-opt would-be spies. Competition for prestige and influence is understandably cutthroat, with only one law holding them together: thou shalt not use intimation on accepted guildmates. As such, the guild is more secret cabal or secret society than it is a guild proper, and social organization over trade guild. That said, there are certain factions that exist beneath the guild. The Spoke of Leo enforces the dictum ruthlessly and without regard for rank. It also pursues knowledge of the shadows and spectres. The vindictive Spoke of Ares maintains endless ledgers of Stygian offences, real and and imagined. Its leaders carefully tend their ancient grudges and keep their subordinates tirelessly working to infiltrate the legions to disrupt hierarchy affairs. Conversely, members of the Spoke of Capricorn see the Skinlands as a giant game board and count their achievements in mortal affairs bent to their whims. Solicitors who still ply their Arcanos commercially are drawn to the Spoke of Taurus and count their wealth in favours owed and wraiths bent to their will. The Spoke of Pisces maintains the Solicitors' few remaining connections with other guilds and broader society, particularly the Pardoners Guild and the Silent Legion. They're the Solicitors most likely to be willing to undo others' work for the right price, but also most likely to be behind heretic personality cults. The Solicitors are certainly not the sort to garner friends, limiting the trust they can build. But of course, when your purpose is making everyone your own puppets, is trust really needed in that sense? Absolutely, for the Solicitors are nothing more than political meddlers. Their worst enemies are themselves, drawing loud characters with bold agendas that refuse to bow motives beyond their own power gains. You do have to wonder, though, just how far is the Solicitors' control of the underworld? How far does it actually reach? Well, given its size, I would be very surprised if it was anything beyond a local scale. Power Solicitors do rule certain necropoli and have certain legionnaires in their back pockets. Others may have heretic cults under their control, but the reach of the Solicitors is not as organized to topple Stygia, and that is perhaps the guild's biggest weakness, their lack of organization. Or is it? What if that is exactly what is going on right now, and the Solicitors have the Death Lords squabble amongst themselves and the guild for some ploy of the Solicitors? And the scary thing is with that idea is that it could be absolutely possibly plausible. To be kept updated, follow the Law by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we'll upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.